Jason turned to run, but his path was blocked as pages tumbled from the seat in a torrent. One handed on his shoulder, another in his back, and then another, and they clung to him, wrapping him around as if they would suffocate him. Jason felt his legs buckle under the weight, jumping at last to one knee. As he braced himself under the storm of the paper, the room began to shake violently. Jason gritted his teeth, trapped, and suddenly it was over. The red-soaked papers were gone, and there was nothing on his back. And Marla had him by the shoulder and was staring at him wide-eyed. Jason, what on earth is wrong with you? Jason scrambled to his feet, pushing himself off as he were covered with invisible insects. The pictures were falling on me, he said urgently, still panicked, he but as he looked back at the wall, he realized that the room was silent and still. A single picture had fallen from its place. Marla looked down at it, then back to her brother, and shook her head. She leaned close and hissed into his ear. You embarrass me. She let loose her grip for a moment, her face almost blank, and walked away. Jason stumbled as he got to his feet but followed as quickly as he could, keeping his eyes trained on the walls as they went. In the control room, Dave had his hands on the buttons, his fingers wandering lightly over them without pressing anything. The movement looked careless and instinctual, like a habit. Charlie leaned close to John. He's been here before, she whispered. Look at the way he touched the controls. Maybe he's just good with computers. John offered, not sounding convinced. Can you make them dance again? Jessica asked. Dave barely seemed to acknowledge the question. His mouth hung slightly open, and he seemed to be staring at something none of them could see. In the bright lights, they could all see that his uniform was grubby and torn in places, his face poorly shaven, and his eyes a little unfocused. He looked less like a guard than a Varigant, and he looked at them all as if he had wandered in ages ago and they were the newcomers. It took him a moment to register the question. Sure, let's see what we can do, he said. A smile. He smiled at her, his mouth askew. His eyes were a little too intent on her face, holding her gaze just a little too long. Jessica swallowed, seized with an instinctive revulsion, but she smiled back politely. All right, I've been here a few times before. I can think I can work some magic. Charlie and John exchanged glances. You've been here before? John said in a careful, even tone, but Dave ignored him, or did not hear. There's a keypad on the far left of the control board that no one had touched yet, as it did not appear to be connected to anything. Now Dave reached for it and began to press buttons quickly as if he had done 100 times before. He gave Jessica a conspiratorial glance. For special occasions, you can request a dance. He smiled at her again with that crooked intensity. Great, Jessica said, breathing a sigh of relief. Anything to get out of such forced proximity to this man. She looked at Lamar. I'm going to go look. Will you take over? Yeah, sure, he said, scurrying forward to fill the vacancy as Jessica and Dave made their way out to the show area. On stage, the lights were flashing in patterns, accompanying music that no longer played, and Bonnie's mouth was moving along with the song. His eyes closed for long blinks and then opened again with loud clicks. His glass eyes moved from side to side. One large blue hand rose and fell, strumming exaggerately on the red guitar whose strings had long since gone missing. Lamar, how much of this are you doing? Carlton said, suitably impressed. Not much, Lamar called back. Most of it seems reprogrammed. Bonnie turned to them, and Jessica startled as he seemed to look right at her. But he turned away just as quickly to face the rows of empty seats, lifting his head to sing. It's strange seeing them like this, Jessica said, taking a step back to get a better view. Bunny's foot tapped along with the rhythm, and his mouth opened and closed with song. There was no voice, there was no music. There was only a strange humming coming from its speakers and an orchestra of mechanical snaps and squeaks. Bunny sped up, strumming and tapping faster. His eyes suddenly seemed out of sync, looking left while the head ran white. then rolling back into his head. Dave approached the stage with deliberate steps. Nervous little fellow, aren't you? He smiled, seemingly unbothered as the rabbit moved faster and faster. Hey Lamar, can you take it down a notch? Jessica called. Bunny's arms began convulsing violently. His mouth opened but stuttered, his eyes throwing their gaze in seemingly random directions. Lamar, something's wrong, Jessica cried. Bunny's foot jerked upward with the sound like a gunshot, yanking free the bolt that anchored him to the stage. Lamar! Carlton climbed onto the stage and hurried to Bunny, trying to search the rabbit for an odd button as he ducked its erratic swings. Carlton, get down, you idiot! Jessica ran to the stage. Bunny was moving too fast, out of control as if his program had a glitch. He was no longer following the dance sequence they all remembered so well. He began to convulse and thrash. Carlton scrambled back, trying to get away, but Bunny's arm broke away from the guitar, swinging out and hitting Carlton across the chest, knocking him off the stage. He landed on his back and stayed down, gasping for air. Lamar! Jessica shouted. Lamar, turn off! I don't know how! He yelled back. Jessica knelt down beside Carlton. Looking helplessly at him, she tapped his shoulder instantly. Carlton, are you okay? Carlton, look at me. Carlton gave a small laugh that sounded more like a cough, then grabbed her hand and pulled himself up to sit. It's okay, he said. I just got the wind knocked out of me. Jessica still looked worried. I just need a minute, he assured her, the words still coming in little wheezes. In the control room, Lamar pressed button after button frantically, but on the screens, he could still see Bunny moving wildly and at random, not responding to anything he did. Charlie rushed in, pushing him out of the way, but it took her only seconds to see what the buttons were powerless. She locked eyes with Lamar for a second. They weren't in control, she thought. As one, they rushed from the control room to help the others. Jessica screamed a short, high-pitched sound, and Marla and John ran to her. Charlie and Lamar arriving seconds later. All the animals were moving now at the same time, fitful way, cycling through the program movements at random with a desperate, panicked air. The lights began to pulse, flickering rapidly on and off. The stage lights did the same, the colors appearing and disappearing so that the whole space was washed first in bright gold, then a sickly green, then a bluish and vicious purple. They blinked like strobes, and the effect was nauseating. The speakers blared brief spurts of static, cutting in and out like the lights. And beneath the static was the same sound they had heard the night before, the growling of a voice too low to be human, too indistinct to be speaking words. The group came together consciously, not quite trusting their own senses. The lights throbbed savagely, and as Charlotte rocked toward her friends, she could not be sure how far away they were or what was right in front of her. They huddled in the middle of the floor, staring at the animals as they rattled and rocked as if with their own agenda. Carlton got to his feet. Jessica watched him with concern, but he waved her off. I told you, I'm fine, he said, shouting to be heard over the air noise. Charlie stood fixed in place, unable to take her eyes off the animals. They're trying to get away, she thought. It was a child's thought, and she tried to dismiss it, but it clung as she watched them, scarcely noticing the fitful flickering of the lights and sound. The animatronic creatures didn't look like they were glitching. Their movements seemed not mechanical but hysterical, like there was something they needed desperately to do but horribly could not. Where's Dave? John said suddenly. Charlie met his eyes with a raising dread. Oh no. They all looked around, but the guard was nowhere in sight. We have to find him, Charlie said. He probably left already. Who cares? Marla said, her voice high and frightened. I'm not worried about him, she said grimly. She turned to John. Come on, she said, setting off toward the hallway to the right of the stage. He glanced at the rest of the group over his shoulder, then followed Charlie with a brisk pace. We should find the other control room and see if we can stop all of this from there, Jessica said crisply. Taking charge. You and Jason go look for Dave, she told Marla. I'll go with them, Lamar said quickly. Control room, Carlton said, looking at Jessica. Control room, she confirmed. They all set off, moving slowly. The stripping lights distorted the space in front of them, seeming to throw up obstacles that were not there, obscuring the runs that were. The effect was disorientating, a constantly shifting maze of light and noise. Ow! Marla shouted, and everyone stopped short. Are you okay? Carlton yelled. Yeah, I just bumped into this stupid merry-go-round, she called back. The speakers were momentarily noiseless, but they shouted across the small distance as if there were a canyon between them. In another hallway, Dave was moving toward a goal. Without the others there to watch, he moved fast, scuttling almost sideways and darting his eyes back over his hunched shoulders from time to time to see he was not followed. There was a large key ring at the bill of his uniform, but only a few keys hung from it. He selected one, opened the door, and let himself into the restaurant's office. He closed the door quickly behind him, cushioning it against noise even though the group will never hear it. This far away or noise between their own shouts and the blaring of the speakers. He turned on the overhead light. It was steady, illuminating the room without a flicker. In the far wall, there was a tall closet flat against the wall, and he used the other key to his ring to open it. Dave stood still in the open door for a long moment, breathing deeply as he did. His back straightened and his hollow chest seemed to expand, drawing an uncharacteristic confidence from what he saw, an odd thin smile on his lips. Dave reached out with his fingertips, savoring the moment, and brushed yellow fur. Jessica and Carlton hurried away down the hall toward the second control room, but Marla and the two boys moved more slowly, sticking their heads into the party rooms, then the arcade. The rooms appeared empty, but in a constantly changing light, Jason thought as they moved on it would be easy to miss just about anything. Having checked the area, Marla and Lamar headed back into the main room. Where's Jessica and Carlton? Lamar said over another burst of garbled sound. Jason stopped and looked back, and in a fleeting instant, he saw it. A rabbit outlined in the hallway for a split second as the lights flashed on him, then vanishing and appearing again in his place in the party room they had just left. Marla? Jason shouted, Marla! His voice was shrill, agitated. She rolled around. What? Are you okay? I saw Bunny. He was there. What? Marla's eyes went automatically to the stage. Bunny was still there, moving back and forth in the same odd, spastic movements. Jason, look, he's there. He can't move off the stage. Jason looked. Bunny was there. I saw him, he thought, looking back down the hallway, but it was empty. Jessica came running up out of breath. Is everyone okay? I heard screaming. We're fine, Lamar said. Jason thought he saw something. Where's Carlton? Lamar said. She rubbed her temples. This light is giving me such a headache. He is still fighting with the controls, Jessica said. We should find Charlie and John. I think we need to get out of here. I think they went that way, Lamar said, pointing to the hall in the front end of the room just past the stage. Come on, Jessica said. Jason followed as the group crossed the main dining room again, maneuvering cautiously around tables and chairs. They looked back as they reached the hall. Suddenly, Bonnie appeared again, darting out from the arcade and ducking into the hall that led to Pirates Cove. Jason watched his sister and the others file through the doorway, then slipped away before they could see him go. They ran across the room, intent on following the rabbit, then slowed his pace when he reached the dark hallway. The lights in the little hall were completely out, and though he could see nothing, it was a minor relief from the pulsing strobes. Jason hugged the wall as he moved, trying to scan ahead of him for signs of movement, but it was too dark. His eyes had not adjusted. For it seemed like ages, he came out of the hall into Pirates Cove. From a distance, he could hear his sister's voice calling his name. Guess they noticed I'm gone, he thought wearily. He ignored it. Crossing the room, he peered down the other hallway, the one that led to more party rooms, but it was so dark that he could scarcely see more than a few feet ahead. Turning back, he approached the little stage, the Ivor sign still strung across it, as if anything in his place is in order. Suddenly, the curtain moved, and Jason froze. The curtain began pulling back. Jason couldn't bring himself to run. All went dark. Then the lights came on suddenly, to reveal Carlton standing in front of him, having emerged from behind the curtain. What are you doing back here by yourself? Come on, let's go. Carlton greeted him with a warm smile. I watched from relief. Jason took a step forward, opening his mouth to speak, and stiffened, struck with still fear. Bunny suddenly broke through the darkness, appearing beneath the stage lights before them. But it was not Bunny. The rabbit's yellow fur was almost blinding in the light. He rushed at them, and before Jason could cry out, the giant rabbit had hold of Carlton from behind, smothering his face with a giant matted paw and wrapping his other great arm around Carlton's chest, gripping tightly. Carlton struggled silently, hitting and kicking, but the creature barely seemed to notice. He screamed into the rabbit's paw, but the sound was swallowed whole. As he fought, the rabbit slunk back the way he came, dragging Carlton with him like a prize from the hunt. Jason watched him go, a gap. His heart raced and his breath was shallow. The stifling air around him made him lightheaded. A noise came from behind him, the grating screech of rusted metal beginning to move, and he leaped forward and turned, moving just in time to avoid a hook as it plunged swiftly downward. Fox's eyes flashed in sync with the lights above, and for a dizzy movement, it seemed to Jason that those eyes were the controlling force behind it all. That if Foxy closed his eyes, every light might go out. The animal did not move like the others. It slowly, purposefully rose between the gap in the curtains, its gleaming eyes reaching a staggering height. Jason! It was Charlie's voice. He knew, but he kept staring back and forth, first at Foxy, then at the place where Carlton had been stealing away. Jason! She called again, and then she and John were beside him, touching him, shaking him out of his ghastly reverie. John grabbed his hand and pulled him into a run. In the main room, the others were already halfway down the hallway and the outside door, all but Marla, who was waiting anxiously at the entrance. Her face flamed with relief when she saw Jason. Marla, Bunny! He took Carlton, Jason yelled, but she just put a hand on his back and pushed him through the door and into the hall. Go, Jason! But I saw Bunny take Carlton, he cried, but he ran afraid to stop. They ran down the hallway to the outside door, all bouncing with the frightened impatience as they filed through the alley one by one. There was no way to go faster. When they were all alone, Charlie looked down in the hallway for a long moment, but there was no one coming. She shoved the door closed and stepped out of the way as Lamar and John wrestled the shelf back into place, blocking it off. No one saw Dave, Charlie said. It was not a question. They all shook their heads. He must have taken off when the lights started going haywire, Lamar offered, but he did not sound convinced. Carlton, Jason cried out. Carlton is still in there. Bonnie took him. They all glanced around him. Carlton was not with them. Oh no, Jessica said. He's still inside. Bonnie took him, Jason said, choking out the words one by one, his voice shaking. I saw it. Bonnie was there. He was in Pirate's Cove, and he grabbed Carlton and carried him away. I couldn't stop him. He scrubbed a sleeve across his face, wiping tears. Oh, sweetheart. Marla hugged him, and he clung to her, hiding his face in her shirt. No, it was a try with the light. Bonnie couldn't do that. He's just a robot. He was on stage when we left. Jason closed his eyes. He had only glanced for a second at the main stage as they were leaving, but it was true. Bonnie had been there, moving in strange and clumsy twists and bends stuck in place. He pulled away from his sister's arms. I saw it, he insisted more weakly. Bonnie took him. The others exchanged glances above his head. Charlie looked at Marla, who shrugged. We have to go back in, Charlie said. We have to get him. Jessica was nodding, but John cleared his throat. I think we need help, he said. It's not safe in there. Let's get Carlton's dad, Marla said. I'm not taking Jason back in there. Charlie wanted to protest, but she bit her tongue. They were right. Of course they were right. Whatever had just happened was beyond them. They needed help.